Hello, everyone. Today we are going to write proofs that we're going to prove something's either a rectangle or a rhombus. So in order to prove a quadrilateral is a rectangle, you can do that one of three ways. You can show that it's first a parallelogram and it has one right angle. That means it's a rectangle. Or you can show it's a parallelogram whose diagonals are congruent. Then it has to be a rectangle. Or you can show it's any quadrilateral with four congruent angles or four right angles. So example 1, we know that ABCD is a rectangle, and we know M is the midpoint of AB. We want to prove that DM is congruent to CM. So when I look at this to do this proof, I'm noticing that I have two triangles, DAM and CBM, which I want to prove congruent. And if I prove those congruent, I can say that DM is congruent to CM. So to prove those congruent, I know that ABCD is a rectangle. So that tells me that angle A is a right angle. And that angle B is a right angle. That's because rectangle implies all right angles. And then since we know that angle A is congruent to angle B. All right angles are congruent. Next, again, because I know ABCD is a rectangle, I can say that AD is congruent to CB. Opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. And then lastly, what I need to do is I'm going to use the fact that they told me M is the midpoint of AB. So if M is the midpoint of AB, that means AM is congruent to MB. Definition of midpoint. And then I have those two triangles congruent by side, angle, side. So DAM is congruent to CBM. And that's side, angle, side. And then I know my sides that I needed congruent. DM is congruent to CM by CPC/TC. And that was really a proof proving triangles given the properties of a rectangle. So number 2, our next example, says that we know ABCD is a parallelogram, and we know DE is perpendicular to AB, and CF is perpendicular to AB. And I want to show that DEFC is a rectangle. So to show that that's a rectangle, first thing that I realize is that since I have DE is perpendicular to AB and CF is perpendicular to AB, that means DE is parallel to CF. Because two lines perpendicular to the same line are parallel. Now I also know, since ABCD is a parallelogram, that DC is parallel to AF. I'm doing the whole bottom, and that's okay, because part of a line is parallel, therefore the whole thing is line parallel. And that's because parallelogram implies opposite sides parallel. Now, what I accomplished by doing that is I know that DCFE is now a parallelogram. because it has two pairs of opposite sides congruent. Or not congruent, parallel. Now to say that it's a rectangle, I really only need to show that there's a right angle. Well, I know that I have perpendicular, so that means the angle DEB is right angle. And that's definition of perpendicular. And therefore, I know it's a rectangle. So I can say DCFE is a rectangle. That's parallelogram with a right angle. Next, we're going to talk about proving a quadrilateral is a rhombus. So there's actually 4 ways I can do this. I can show that it's a parallelogram with 2 congruent consecutive sides, then it's a rhombus. I can show it's a quadrilateral with 4 congruent sides, then it's a rhombus. I can show it's a parallelogram whose diagonals are perpendicular, then it's a rhombus. Or I can show it's a parallelogram and the diagonal bisects the angles whose vertices it joins, then it's a rhombus. So let's look at this proof. So we know it's a quadrilateral, and we know that angle D is congruent to angle E. And we know 1 is congruent to 2. And we know 1 is congruent to 4. So, oops, and that last one wasn't written in our givens here. So when I look at that, I see 1 is congruent to 1 is congruent to 4. That tells me that angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. And that's transitive, or substitution. Now, knowing that 1 is congruent to 2, actually, so I know that. And then what I'm looking at here is that I know triangle DTU is congruent to triangle, I know this triangle. So actually it's TDU is congruent to triangle TEU. And I know that because I know TU is congruent to TU. And that's reflexive. And then I know those 2 triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side. So now knowing those triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side, I can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 by CPCTC. Now, in order to say it's a rhombus, I need that the diagonal bisects both angles, which I have that it bisects both angles, but I need to know it's a parallelogram. So I need to say that this is a parallelogram before I can say it's a rhombus. So in order to say it's a parallelogram, I can get that a couple of ways. I know based on my CPCTC that TE, that actually doesn't help me because those are consecutive sides. I know that DT is parallel to UE. Because alternate interior angles implies parallel. Because I know that 1 is congruent to 2. Before I can do the other pair parallel, I need to say that 3 is congruent to 4, but I can say that because of the transitive. Then I can say the other pair, which is DU and TE, which is alternate interior angles congruent, implies parallel. Then I know that DUET is a parallelogram. Opposite sides parallel, implies parallelogram. And I know that it's a rhombus because it's a parallelogram with a diagonal bisecting both angles. So if you have a question on these, please let me know tomorrow in class. Have a great day.